CSIS is reaffirming its assessment that India is one of the largest perpetrators of foreign interference. Do you believe CSIS's assessment, or do you believe what a senior official told reporters that activity isn't continuing anymore? Which is it?
The words of the senior official are not words that I personally would use.
Yesterday, we reported that a senior government official claimed India is no longer interfering in Canada. We had hoped someone would put that directly to Mark Carney, but the question was at least put to Anita Anand. It appeared to catch her off guard, leaving her nearly speechless on two separate occasions as she struggled to reconcile the statement with the government's own joint declaration and the fact that the delegation even went to India in the first place.
Let's take a look.
I'd like to talk to you about Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The Globe reported today that Canadian authorities gathered evidence showing that Indian nationals working in the country's Vancouver consulate supplied information to assist with the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And in fact, Kanwaljit Singh was in fact an agent with India's Raw Intelligence Service. So my question is, we've got 4 Indian citizens on trial for the murder of Mr. Nijjar, but not Mr. Singh from the consulate or the Indian government. So we've had the High Commissioner tell us with a straight face yesterday there was never any foreign interference in Canada by India. What is your government doing to hold the Indian government accountable for the murder of Mr. Nijjar?
I am not going to comment on an investigation that is occurring now and a trial that is also in process, stemming from an issue that is alleged to have arisen some time ago. I will say that we took immediate action, and when I met with Minister Jaishankar yesterday, of course, I raised the importance of security and security issues relating to the Canadian population. As I have mentioned to a number of you on a number of times, that is one of my priorities as foreign minister. And if I may, draw your attention to the joint statement that the leaders of India and our Prime Minister have issued. There is a full paragraph on security cooperation, including the bilateral security dialogue that is convened at the level of the National Security Advisors. And the Indian National Security Advisor, Mr. Doval, was in the meeting between the Prime Ministers this morning. We will continue to cooperate on national security and law enforcement. We've outlawed or listed the Bishnoi gang, as I've mentioned to you. We have a number of pieces of legislation, including on extortion. We are going to continue to ensure that we are addressing all instances of foreign interference and transnational repression. But on the subject matter of your question, which relates to RCMP work and investigations, because we are a country of the rule of law, political figures do not get involved in RCMP investigations, data collection, trials, and judicial processes.
Follow-up question. Your Prime Minister.
Well, there was a lot there, but first and foremost, I found it very interesting that a minister as seasoned as Anita Anand requires speaking points, because it looked like those papers that she was holding in front of her, she was referring down to.
Oh, and as he was asking the questions, she's shuffling the cue cards into place, right? You could see that. Couple things that I noticed. I noticed that Anand says, well, we're a rule of law country. Politicians don't get involved in RCMP investigations.
Except when they do.
S&Z Lavalin, anybody? Just saying. You know, Aga Khan, anybody? Just saying. But this is coming from a minister who served under Prime Minister Trudeau that took it upon himself to stand up in the House of Commons and broadcast everybody, breaking news, everybody. India is interfering within our democracy, and we have information to show that they're actually murdering our citizens.
Well, whether the individual was citizen or not is up for debate. Yet the point is that allegedly India is committing murders on Canadian soil.
Right. And the interference, it's funny because I've seen this excuse actually made online where they say, well, it's just a Khalistani thing, and if they weren't here, it wouldn't be a problem. You should go read the Hogue Report because it's more than just that. Just saying. But the fact that she, A, had to have these speaking points, and B, she kind of had trouble landing the plane in the middle of her response. It shows that they're not really all that prepared for this. And this wasn't the end of it.
Minister, you were in the cabinet of the Prime Minister who stood up in the House and said that there was credible evidence of a link between the murder of Mr. Nijjar and Indian government agents. So he stood up and said that. Well, do you believe there's credible evidence of a link between the Indian government and the murder of Mr. Nijjar?
As I said, there is an active investigation that is ongoing, and it would be irresponsible for me to comment, to probe, to discuss any matter that is the subject of an ongoing investigation. As I have also said, that is what the rule of law specifically says, that there is independence between the law enforcement in our country on the one hand and political processes on the other. This is not for politicians to address.
And if I can add to that, to Minister Nunn's comments, this is about law enforcement dialogue continuing. A few weeks ago, you saw the National Security Advisor from India come to Canada to talk to our National Security Advisor, but also met with our Public Safety Minister to continue that conversation on collectively fighting organized crime, transnational repression. But we can have two conversations that happen at the same time. And so this trip is also about economic diversification. If you look at what we signed today in terms of MOUs, Cameco signing of over $2 billion deal for uranium to power India's civil nuclear sector. That's about thousands of jobs in Ontario that are supported by the nuclear sector. To me, it's not about the billions, it's about the workers at home. And so if you look at what India is doing in terms of other partners, like-minded partners, they signed a trade agreement with the UK, with the EU, with the EFTA countries, with New Zealand. And so we need to ensure that we are at the table, having those conversations, opening up opportunities. And so in Mumbai, we had great conversations with the auto sector, energy, agriculture, critical minerals. And so these are all things that India needs as they grow at the pace that they're going.
Okay, so one thing that I'm noticing in this press conference and some of the other ones that we've been watching, we hadn't necessarily aired them, but it sounds like the Liberals are trying to change the definition of transnational repression. Because what I'm hearing immediately before those two words is them saying organized crime. So when they say, well, we're working with them, with this National Security Advisor, and when we're working with organized crime, transnational repression. So it sounds like they're trying to link organized crime with transnational repression. And transnational repression is usually understood as not being caused by organized crime. Organized crime may be used as part of this, but that's typically from another country.
Like the government.
Like the government. Like the United Front Work Department in China, like India. Ask some of the immigrants that have come over from India if they like their government coming over and threatening them and interfering in elections and interfering in the lives of just normal Canadian citizens that have worked hard to get over here. That's the interesting part about this. And, maybe we've learned why RCMP investigations take so long. So the politicians can sit there and say, well, I can't comment on an active investigation. Well, if the investigation takes 10 years, well, then I guess you never get to comment on it, do you?
Prime Minister
CSIS
raised the issue of transnational regression
CSIS
with...
is reaffirming
Just a
its
moment,
assessment that India is one of the largest perpetrators of foreign interference. Do you believe CSIS's assessment, or do you believe what a senior official told reporters that that activity isn't continuing anymore? Which is it?
The words of the senior official are not words that I personally would use. I agree with his comments relating to the guardrails that we have in place, the work we're doing on the security dialogue, the work that we are doing to list the Bishnoi gang as a terrorist entity, the work we did to expel senior Indian diplomats and senior Indian officials, the work we're doing to implement legislation on extortion and follow the money, on law enforcement generally, including beefing up the RCMP, and the work that we are going to continue to do in the interests of keeping the population in Canada safe and secure, which is always our top priority.
Just to follow up,
That got awkward really quick. She didn't even really know how to start to answer that. So,
Well, I mean, you've got a senior Liberal official who, at this point, is unnamed, but they're saying one thing, and then you have CISA saying something completely different.
well, you're also having Liberal MPs back at home jumping up and down saying, what is going on? This is garbage, and we need clarification. And when things are kind of blowing up back home, while Mark Carney over in India, as we said before, like this happened at the worst possible time, because they can't just come out and say, oh yeah, you know, the Indian government is terrible and they're interfering with our democracy, while they're in India trying to get some sort of trade agreement.
Or an MOU.
Yes, the move, because it's, anyway, I'm not going to say anything because it's unparliamentary, but this is the challenge that you have. Oh, well, you know, we expelled the diplomats right away, and we declared, you know, the Bishnoi gang, you know, a terrorist organization. Hooray. And you wouldn't have used those words. Well, you know, because they're referring to our guardrails, which we still don't know what they are, by the way. Nope, nobody knows what they are.
Because they made the same agreement with China and are refusing to tell us exactly what's going on.
And the Conservatives have asked the Prime Minister to show them the MOU with China instead of just their talking points, and they won't show them. So you're saying that you're making this your top priority. Well, we're going to come back to that in a minute, that it's their top priority. It's so important.
You tell us whether the Prime Minister raised the issue of...
As I said, I would not have used those words.
What does that mean?
Excuse me, Abigail.
Thank you. Can either of you tell us whether Prime Minister Carney raised the issue of foreign interference and transnational repression with Modi? Can you look into that way?
It's hard when you're standing over
I know,
there.
I'm sorry. And
It's also...
can you tell us in what context?
The question is one that I can only answer from my conversations. And in my conversations with my counterpart, Minister Jaishankar, I have raised the issue of public security and safety in Canada in numerous occasions, including when I met with him yesterday. And I want to add another point, which is, over and above my conversations, please have a look at the joint statement that the leaders of each country, Canada and India, have issued together, where there is a specific paragraph on security cooperation. And I will quote, "The bilateral security dialogue convened at the level of the national security advisors and the agreement to a shared work plan to guide enhanced cooperation on national security and law enforcement priorities continues." In other words, there is agreement between Canada and India to continue to ensure the safety and security of the Canadian population, and we need to be at the table. We need to engage. We need to have these diplomatic conversations in order to make progress of this sort. It's extremely important to remember that diplomacy is not about retreating and hiving yourself off from having difficult conversations. It's very much about ensuring that the written word is marking the path forward on national security. That's exactly what we are doing here in India, as well as ensuring that we're diversifying trade and the Canadian economy.
I wouldn't say that diplomacy doesn't have a place, but I would be extremely cautious when you're working with a country that is alleged to be interfering in our elections.
Well, I will take Anita at her word, right? Diplomacy is not about retreating. Diplomacy is about stepping forward and having those conversations and getting something done, getting a written word on, and making yourself more prosperous. So why aren't you having those conversations with the United States of America and Donald Trump?
Because Orange Man bad?
This is the hypocrisy that's going on. But she wants everybody to have a look at this joint statement. So we did. So this is the paragraph that Anita Anand is talking about. Now, this is the interesting part about this, because remember, we talk about organized crime, transnational repression, and I'm going to continue reading where she kind of left off. It says, including the illegal flow of narcotics and fentanyl, precursors, cybercrime, extortion, financial fraud, trafficking, and related criminal networks. The leaders supported the establishment of security and law enforcement liaison mechanisms to streamline bilateral communication and enable timely information sharing, and committed to strengthen cooperation on cybersecurity and immigration enforcement consistent with domestic laws and international obligations. They also called for the early convening of the next meeting of the Joint Working Group on Counterterrorism. That doesn't sound anything like foreign interference to me. Now, she wants everybody to think that this is really important. So if this was really, really, really that important, as she wants everybody to think, you would think that this would have taken up a large amount of space in this joint statement. At least I would, because that kind of shows where your focus is. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the joint statement of India and Canada. And here are all sections where they talk about security.
One section.
Less than probably 5% of the entire thing. So you want to sit there and try and tell Canadians that this is important. Canadians, understand that law enforcement collaboration is completely different than our leader telling their leader to take a hike when it comes to foreign interference. That's not the same. Do you really expect us to believe that? Well, our law enforcement agencies are now talking, and that means that our government isn't going to be planning any more foreign interference activities. Those are completely separate things. And the fact that you believe that Canadians are going to be gaslit about this, and they're just going to forget about this, you got another thing coming. Kudos to the reporters. They were saying, well, these four guys were charged, but not the two guys that were in the consulate. Well, I'm not going to comment on that. Oh, we have guardrails in place. Trust us, bro. That's what's going on here. And you can see how awkward she feels when saying these things. And that shows you she doesn't believe a word of it. And this is the whole thing that's starting to unravel, I think, for the Liberals, even within their own party. Because they're trying to say, well, we have these guardrails, and I kind of agree with the person insofar as the guardrails. So if you take that to completion, and this was a huge mistake by Anand saying this, is what she's saying is, okay, well, when the guy said that there's no longer any foreign interference when it comes to India, you can interpret that as because of our guardrails. So it sounds like you're agreeing with him that there's no more interference, despite what CSIS is saying, despite what the RCMP is saying, despite what the World Sikh organizations and the Canadian Sikh organizations are saying, despite what all these other organizations are saying, and despite what your own Liberal MPs are saying. Good luck with that. Let's see how that works out for you on the plane ride back.